Welcome to Conversations with Cubit. Thank you for joining me tonight. And if you are looking for information, if you are looking for inspiration, if you're looking for hope, you've landed to the right place. I have to tell you, I have to appreciate all the support we receive for these weekly conversations. Last week was great. This week is going to be great. Thanks for tuning in. I am very excited about tonight's conversation. I'm excited about tonight's guest. But before we get started, let me remind you of a very important date, June 28th. It's the primary election, and all of us need to participate by doing two simple things. First, just simply get out and vote. Secondly, cast an informed vote by getting to know as much about candidates as possible. And tonight is one of those opportunities. If you are new to these weekly conversations, welcome to the family. We're excited that you found your way here. Be sure to check out some of those past conversations on my YouTube channel. Just jump over to YouTube and look up Conversations with Cubit. And once you get there, once you find that page, subscribe and hit the like button. That just helps us get the word out a little bit more and keep these conversations going. But after that, you can check out any of the past conversations. Just look around. They're all good. Trust me. But right now, I need you to do me a favor and share tonight's conversation. That's right. Do not keep this conversation to yourself. Pass this conversation on to your community. Tonight, we are talking to one of the candidates for Oklahoma County District Attorney. So you absolutely must share this conversation with your community. It's very important. So hit the share button right now. Do it. All right. Special thanks to my friends out here at Green Pasture Studios. They've been hosting these weekly conversations for over a year. My friends Richard and Amy James are running things out here. It's a full-fledged production studio. I'm always excited about all the things they're doing out here, and you will be excited too once you figure out more about what they're doing. Everything from a full-fledged movie production, commercials, and even a film training academy. Exciting stuff going out here. Look them up. You'll be glad you did. Now, let me tell you, if you're new, this is why I do it. If you always join in, you know these three simple rules. I only do these conversations to add value to people and my community. 2, I want to inspire you to believe in what people and communities can become when we're willing to work together. And 3, love people, period. All this means is I want you to be inspired. I want you to get useful information and resources, and I want to celebrate individuals, groups, and organizations who are making a positive impact on our community. Every conversation here on Conversations with Cubit will be about information, inspiration, and hope. Are you ready? So let's get started. Please allow me to introduce to you my friend, Vicki Behenna. I always mess it up.
No, that's perfect.
All right. Vicki is a friend of mine. She is the first female second-time guest on the show. I'm telling you. I met her a few years ago as we shared the stage discussing race relations and justice a couple of years ago. And she has over 30 years of legal experience. She has witnessed virtues and the shortcomings of our criminal justice system. Vicki is a graduate of Oklahoma City University School of Law and spent more than 25 years as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Oklahoma. And during her tenure, she tried fraud cases and was responsible for the prosecution of complex public corruption cases. She was elected to participate in the Oklahoma City bombing case against Timothy McVeigh as a special attorney to U.S. Attorney Janet Reno. She has spent the last 8 years on the other side of the courtroom as a defense attorney. In 2015, Vicki was named the executive director of the Oklahoma Innocence Project, which is why she was on the show maybe last year or so. Vicki's work with the Innocence Project has led her to testify before the U.S. Congress and advocate for recent legislation at the state capitol on best practices regarding forensic science, interrogations, and the misidentification of innocent people. 2 pieces of bipartisan legislation championed by Vicki and allies were recently signed into state law by Governor Kevin Stitt. Vicki and her husband Scott have been married for 43 years. They have lived in Oklahoma County for 41 years and are the proud parents of 3 adult sons. Please help me welcome a big virtual welcome to my friend Vicki Behenna.
Thank you for having me again.
Again,
I very appreciate
and I'm seeing you everywhere now. But you've given up the seat at the Innocence Project.
I have. Yes, it broke my heart. I mean, I was so passionate and am so passionate about helping right wrongful convictions. But Right. It was the right thing to do. If I'm running for district attorney, I probably
You got to
shouldn't
do.
be the
Okay,
innocent.
you're giving that up. All right. I'm pulling out my phone because on my phone I have 15 questions
Okay.
that help me figure out who's more aligned with my things.
Okay.
That's how I figure out how I'm going to vote, because I can't figure out all these hard questions and stuff. But for me, if I ask you beer or wine and you pick the same one that I pick, that's
We're
my
cool.
candidate.
Then we're good. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
all right, all right, here we go.
This should be good.
All right, here we go. This is easy. This is easy. And I do this with everybody. So have you been watching?
I've
any of the
been
shows?
watching, yes.
So you probably know the questions. All right, I'll change them up. I'll start changing them up. But all right, so maybe I'll go from the bottom up. Maybe
Okay.
I'll throw you off a little.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we're gonna start from the bottom and go upward. All right, beer or wine? Let's just start there.
Whiskey,
Which one?
Jameson, and Ha'penny.
Okay, I have to note to self. That's a winner. That's a winner. Okay, I just got some Glenlivet. the
Yes,
other day.
wonderful.
Yeah, 15 year.
Yeah,
Oh,
good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Yeah, I'm just waiting for them to say COVID lockdown one more time, and I'm
And
good.
you're opening the bottle.
I'm good enough. All right. All right. At bedtime, does the TV need to be on or off?
On.
You can't. Yeah,
That's naughty.
I
isn't
can't
it?
fall asleep.
Yeah,
I can't fall
thank
asleep
you.
with that at all. So
Thank you.
we're good.
Okay,
we're good.
okay.
We're good. I got to ask you, Will Smith or Chris Rock?
Chris Rock.
Is that because of recent events, or has it always been Chris Rock?
Yes. No, I love Will Smith, but I can't abide by what he did at the Oscars, so it really hurts my heart. But
So you had to let him go.
yeah, I gotta let him go.
All right.
That's not appropriate.
All right.
Not ever.
If you're home alone and you're showing off, are you singing or dancing?
Dancing.
Dancing. Okay. Birthday party or wedding?
Birthday party.
Birthday party. That's right. That's good. Scary movie or comedy?
Oh, comedy.
All the way.
I can't handle scary movies.
No, I can't stand them. Handshake or hug?
Hug. It's got to be a hug.
There you go. Oh, if you get this one right, we're batting 1,000. Truck or car?
Car.
Ooh, I knew we were going to split ways right there. I knew it. Okay. I was going too good to be true there. All right. Do you call it soda or do you call it pop?
Neither. I call it Diet Coke.
Everything's Diet Coke?
Everything's Diet Coke. Sorry.
Sprite is Diet Coke. 7-Up is Diet Coke. That's hard to imagine. Okay, I get it. I get it. Rock and roll or rap?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Okay. If you had your choice, good barbecue or good seafood?
Seafood.
I'm torn there. Either way. Would you rather have a phone call or text?
Phone call.
Really? Okay. Do you call it?
Depending on who it is.
Depending on who it is.
Maybe I ought to qualify it. Yeah. If it's someone I don't want to talk to, I'd rather do a text.
Just
but
get
if
it
it's
over
somebody,
with.
yeah.
Sneakers or tennis shoes? Which one do you call it? I know, tennis shoes. I know.
We're showing our age here. It's tennis shoes.
Already know. What's worse, doing the dishes or doing the laundry?
Well, probably doing the dishes.
Really?
Yeah, because my husband does the laundry, so
Well, good guy, but I do not like the laundry.
it's the folding part, right?
It's the putting up.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's the putting up.
Dumping it in
I
there
don't
is
wanna put
easy.
it. Yes.
Yeah, I don't wanna fold
that
it.
kind of stuff. Vicki, tell us about you. I know a little bit, right? Because we've had conversations before. But for those that are just trying to get to know you, tell us about your upbringing, where you're from. Catch us up to speed on who you are.
Born in Oklahoma City 100 years ago. Raised here until I was 10. Moved away, graduated from high school in Mannheim, Germany, of all places. Came back to Oklahoma to go to school. Went to OU. The plan was to leave maybe after we graduated. My husband and I married as sophomores in college, if you can
really?
believe that.
Uh-huh.
Crazy. Then I got accepted to law school, started having children, and Oklahoma seemed like a great place to raise a family. So we
Yeah.
stayed. Legal career has just been not planned at all, but just going wherever I felt I was needed. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. I get that. You
You get called to certain things.
yeah. What does that
completely
feel like when you're?
unexpectedly.
What does it feel like to be called to something? How do you know?
Resistant at first. That's how I know that it's something that I should do, because I feel like maybe I don't really want to walk that path. Maybe it's going to be a little bit more
It's
difficult.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's presented as crazy.
Yes.
Not equipped to do.
Yes.
For me, that's what it's like.
Yes.
Like, why? No,
Yes.
I'm not capable.
That's it.
And it just keeps tugging. Okay. Yep.
And there you go, down that path.
So tell us about your pathway to making this decision to run for this particular office. It's not easy office. It's a high profile office. A lot of responsibility. You're jumping out from behind the scenes into the front seat.
And into the pot, actually.
Into the pot.
Is what I feel like. No, I mean, people started talking to me about running for the district attorney's position over a year ago. And I was resistant. No, I'm not going to do that. Because I had my own practice and things were going well. And I had clients that I liked. I had trials that were scheduled. And I was very resistant. And then people would talk to me and I would say, well, okay, I'll consider it. And toward the end of last year, when some of my cases were finishing up, I just felt, I woke up one night in the middle of sleep, and the district attorney's position was on my brain. And the next morning I thought, if I still have those thoughts, then maybe I'll say yes and I'll throw my hat in. And that's what happened. In the morning I woke up, but I didn't have any concerns or trepidations. I thought, this is what I need to do. And so I announced to the people closest to me that I was going to go ahead.
What'd your husband
say? He thought I was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's totally on board now. But, we had a nice, quiet little life and things were going okay. And so to drop into that arena, and I've never run for an office before, ever. So that was something completely outside my lane. But no, he's totally on board. I mean, look, one of the reasons I decided to do this is because this office is too important to have somebody in the office that doesn't have experience. And not just experience on prosecuting. I mean, that's obviously important, but I felt like I had the depth and diversity of experience in the criminal justice system. I mean, you know this story, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, talk about your depth. Talk about if the experience was a pie chart, cut out the pieces of the pie for us.
Yeah, 25 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, prosecuting major federal crimes, being on the Oklahoma City bombing investigation and prosecution. So I understand the role of a prosecutor. I understand the obligations of a prosecutor. I understand how law enforcement should operate when they're investigating cases. So I have that piece. Then I had a family member that went through the criminal justice system. And I saw it from the criminal justice system I'm talking about, from a different perspective, and that is the perspective of having a loved one charged and going to trial and having to hire a criminal defense lawyer for your son. And as I said, I saw it from a different perspective, from a parent that's watching a loved one go through that. And so that experience made me start looking to think, when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, maybe I need to do something else. Maybe I need to offer my experience to somebody who is also facing the criminal justice system. So I left the U.S. Attorney's Office. I went out and I did private practice, criminal defense work. And I've done that for 8 years, trying to advise families about, where they are in the process and, what works best for them. Because fighting, unfortunately, sometimes is not the best option. Sometimes the best option is trying to get the best possible plea deal you can for somebody. But then again, along with that, when I was in private practice, the dean of the law school, Dean Couch, called me and said, Vicki, we really need you to help at the Oklahoma Innocence Project. And it had been something that I was always interested in. And so when she called me and said, Vicki, we have these 2 young men of color, from the north side of Tulsa, who were prosecuted and convicted of first-degree murder and given life without parole, and they need your help. They need somebody that can put on an evidentiary hearing for them. We've already looked at the evidence. And she said, will you help? And I said, well, let me look at the trial transcript of the trial, and I'll make a decision. And I read the trial transcript, and I mean, you've been in law enforcement. I mean, it made me sick that two young people could be convicted on such shallow evidence, showing that they were anyway related to this shooting. And so I told her, sure, I'm all in. And I worked through the end of 2015, got ready for the evidentiary hearing in January, presented the evidence to the judge, who found the two men factually innocent of the crime of murder. And it was the absolute high point of my career to watch those two gentlemen walk out of prison with sentences of life without parole into the arms of their family after 22 years in prison. And both men, I stay in contact with them. They're doing wonderfully. They're both working. They have families now. And then, of course, I was able to help another man, Willard O'Neill, who was also convicted from the north side of Tulsa, was facing a sentence of life without parole. And I mean, he's out working, doing beautifully now.
So I guess the question I have about when we're talking about that pie chart of experience, the prosecution side of you, being a family member or a mom with a son going through a case, and then helping the Innocence Project. How do you define justice? Where is the justice in the justice system? Last week we talked to George Young, who said he's now calls it the criminal legal system because justice is so hard to find. But with this level of experience, help us define justice.
You know, I think I told you once before in one of our previous conversations that the justice system we have in the United States is a good system, but it is not perfect. And I think that's the first thing, for people to understand mistakes happen. That's why it's so important for the district attorney, who is the leader of that office in this county, to make sure that young prosecutors understand their constitutional and ethical obligations, to make sure law enforcement thoroughly investigates a case and doesn't prejudge the evidence because they believe that this person committed this crime. So justice requires, in my opinion, experience, somebody with a diverse experience that can say these things need to happen before charges are filed, before somebody is brought up on a preliminary hearing, before they end up in trial, to make sure mistakes are minimized, to ensure that the justice system, although it's never going to be perfect, operates at the highest level of integrity with the understanding that justice is the goal. Convictions are not the goal. Justice is the goal. I had a U.S. attorney, Judge Tim Leonard, he's now a federal judge, a retired federal judge, who told me after the first case that I tried as a young assistant United States attorney, went through the trial, that went fine, went to sentencing, watched really the struggle of the family, watching their loved one being sentenced to prison. At that point in time, we had the federal guidelines that were mandatory, and so the judge had no discretion. They had to sentence within that guideline. And I made it out of the courtroom, went into the stairwell, and was really upset, physically upset. And I went up to the U.S. Attorney, Tim Leonard, and I said, I can't do this. I mean, I cannot watch families go through this. I mean, I had no doubt that their loved one had committed a crime,
right,
and that we presented a righteous case. But the sentencing was really difficult for me. And Judge Leonard looked me in the eye and he said, you're exactly the person that needs to be in this position, because you're going to ensure that justice occurs, because that's our job, to do justice and not just get convictions. And so I've kind of lived with that principle my whole life. So this is a long response to your very short question.
No, it's good. It's
the
good.
The justice system requires integrity and fairness in order to make sure justice occurs.
That's really good. I like the fact that you talk about convictions versus justice, because I want to know how we feel about it. Feels like sometimes our justice system that we work on right now is really heavy-handed and penal. That we're not trying to fix people, we're trying to punish people. How do you turn, if that's the case, if you even see it, if you agree with me at all,
Yeah.
how do you turn a system that is headed toward punishment to one that is turned toward rehabilitation? How do you do that as district attorney?
You know, and I think that there are some processes in place right now in Oklahoma County. We have 7 wonderful diversion programs where we're trying to understand, and I think we do understand, that sending people to jail that have mental health issues or substance abuse issues really isn't the function and the purpose of the criminal justice system. Remember, you and I entered the criminal justice system and law enforcement when the tough on crime was the mantra, right? We figured if people messed up,
And I knew how to do
jail.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You know, if people mess up, they go to jail for 20, 25 years or whatever it takes to get them right. We really weren't focused on rehabilitation. I think now, through the studies of social scientists, we're beginning to understand that rehabilitation, restorative justice, diversion programs are really where we need to be, because what we're finding is that when we send people to prison for 15, 20, 25 years, we've created an institutionalized person that when they get out are not going to know how to live in society, because society has passed them by in that 20, 25 years. Now, I'm not saying that everybody can be rehabilitated, because I do think there are sociopaths among us, and those people need to be identified and separated from society so they don't continue to harm people. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who have the ability and the desire, and quite honestly, the interest in doing something different in their life. We just need to hand them the opportunity to be able to get their lives back on track.
And if they need to be
do something
separated for a little while, then they need to be separated for a little while.
That's exactly right.
But what's
And
happening when they're separated is what?
That's exactly the point. But I don't think that what we're doing a lot of times is rehabilitation.
Right.
That's the point.
Okay.
Right? And so locking people up and not trying to do anything. I mean, the 2 young men that I talked about earlier on the Innocence Project, they had life without parole. They had no rehabilitation, vocation, nothing given to them because they had life without parole. Now, maybe that's a different circumstance, but my point is that we've got to be able to have programs so that when people come out of the system, they have a skill set, they have the skills to be able to deal with their addiction, they have the skills to deal with past trauma, and maybe we get them on a level playing field when they come out.
And that's so interesting, because we know, out of all the things we don't know about the system and people and all that kind of stuff, we do know this. Most of them are coming home. Most of them are coming back.
They are coming out into society again.
Yeah.
So it behooves us, doesn't it,
Right.
as a society to
Right.
make sure they've got some skill sets behind
Right.
them. Absolutely.
I think the role of district attorney is so important, but for this reason, for many reasons, but one reason is you're going to be in charge of community safety. Part of that responsibility also lies on law enforcement in the police department. So there has to be this relationship between the district attorney's office and the police department. And I got to ask you, this is the elephant in the room. There's 5 officers right now charged with serious crime in the district attorney's office, and that would probably still be going on when the new district attorney takes over. Where are you on this, and how do you hold law enforcement accountable and also keep them on the team?
Well, let me start off by this. I will tell you the same thing that I told the FOP when I spoke to their membership probably about a month ago. Because I got a question, right? Are you ever going to charge a police officer?
Are you ever going to charge a police? I was trying not to be that straightforward with the question,
well, I mean,
but yeah.
There's a candidate who said that he was going to dismiss those charges, and I told the police officers there, I will not promise to get their vote, then I will never charge a police officer. But I will tell you that facts matter, and that if police officers abide by their training and experience and use appropriate force, they have nothing to worry about. When a police officer goes outside of his training and uses improper force, that death, if a death results, is going to be investigated like any other death in the county to determine what the facts are, and for the law enforcement officer's sake, whether the use of force at that point was appropriate, and whether they met the appropriate force with force, if that's clear.
Mm-hmm. We went dark or something, or I had a stroke. The lights just went out. Anyway, I think we're good.
And so look, I mean, a decision has been made that there's sufficient evidence in those police officers' case to charge them. I don't know the facts of that case. I mean, that would be one of the things that I would review on day one.
Right.
And to figure out what the facts are, talk to the experts, the use of force experts, and try to figure out if those charges were properly brought and what the evidence is against those police officers as they get ready for trial. But I can't tell you that, in order to build trust and an alliance with the Oklahoma City Police Department or other police departments, that I'm going to just dismiss those charges on day one. I think it would be inappropriate and unethical for me to say that. I will work with law enforcement. I'm from a law enforcement family. I mean, I worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office 25 years. My husband was with the State Bureau of Investigation and then worked for the FBI as an intelligence analyst. I understand that we have to have trust among police departments and prosecutors, but there also has to be an understanding that there's going to be a review in cases where police officers shoot citizens in Oklahoma County.
Yeah. We talk, me and you, and I appreciate this about you, is that you don't run from this hard subject, racial bias, right? You don't run from it. We've sat on panels and talked about it. It is a significant racial bias or discrepancy in the numbers in the criminal justice system. Right. How do you face this? How do you deal with it? How do you talk about it? How do you manage it? How do you bring the numbers to more of a balance?
Well, I think first of all, beginning with this understanding that prosecutors and law enforcement put evidence together, right? In the beginning of a case, you do an investigation, you look at the evidence. From that, a prosecutor decides, not based upon what the person looks like or where their zip code is, what charges should be brought based upon the facts. And once those charges are filed, sentencing recommendations, whether that person goes to a diversion program, whether that person gets 4 or 5 years for that particular offense so that they can understand that there's punishment and consequences to the actions that they took, and then come out, whether they go, whether it's a harsher sentence based upon their criminal history. All that has to be judged based upon the facts and the law, and not upon a person's color, what they look like, or where they live. And so as the district attorney, that tone has to be set very early on, that a person over here from this part of Oklahoma County gets their sentencing recommendation of this amount, but this person from another portion of Oklahoma County gets this sentencing recommendation. That's not going to be tolerated.
Here's what scares me about investigations without someone going through the training and taking the training serious about addressing their bias, the stuff called confirmation bias.
Right.
Like I got 100 cases, I got all, and I've seen this before. I know what they do. They kind of go with the thing, and so you already kind of have an idea based on assumptions, and their zip code and their color and what they look like and their long hair and their tattoos or whatever, or they're a woman or their sexual orientation, whatever the case may be. You start making these assumptions, and because you're making those assumptions, you only look for the evidence that supports your assumptions. It doesn't mean that they're not facts. It just means I'm not looking at the facts that disprove what I already believe.
That is exactly how wrongful convictions happen. I have seen it time and time again. In the two cases that I talked about, the two young men from the north side of Tulsa, that's exactly what happened. The law enforcement officers ignored the evidence that was leading somewhere else and focused on these two boys because that's what they believed or who they believed committed this crime. As a prosecutor, I always reviewed the evidence. That what I felt was my role. And if I saw holes in the evidence, I asked, what about this? Why don't you go interview person X and see what they say? What happened to the DNA? Have you checked DNA? Do we have fingerprints on this? So it's the role of the prosecutor, as I see it, to be able to ask those questions of law enforcement. Look, how police officers do their investigations, I mean, that's something that the chief or the detectives at the police department have to train and have to handle. But I can tell you, each prosecutor should be a gatekeeper for each case that's brought to them and to review the evidence thoroughly and to try to plug holes or say, what about this? It looks like this witness said person Y might have been involved in this. Have we done that part of the investigation? That's the role of a prosecutor from my perspective. And hopefully, in communication with law enforcement, they'll begin to understand that there's an expectation that the evidence be followed.
Right. One last question, and I hate to rush off. There's so many questions I have about the DA's office in that role, but what do we do about, how do we prevent, I mean, I know that you talked about the integrity of in that type of things in the office, but you come from a wrongful conviction background, that's in your background. How do we prevent it from happening?
First of all, understand that it happens, okay?
You don't mind saying, we missed this one, I'm sorry?
That's exactly right. I mean, we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to do that because we don't get it right all the time. And when DNA comes to, evidence comes to us 10, 20 years later, we have to be able to look at that and say, okay, we made a mistake, and to do what is right, to do what is just in that case. So no, I mean, I think the first recognition is that mistakes happen and try to do what we can do to minimize those mistakes. Following proper eyewitness identification. As you know, when we first started in law enforcement, we thought eyewitness identification was the absolute best. And we now know that it's probably the worst and less reliable piece of evidence. So recognizing and training people about how mistakes happen in the criminal justice system. Prosecutors or law enforcement not following the evidence, prosecutors not turning over all the evidence that could exculpate somebody. And so those things, that's a training issue that has to happen for every prosecutor, in my opinion. So if you know where the mistakes are, you know where the problems and the issues could lie, then you won't repeat those mistakes in the future and hopefully alleviate wrongful convictions.
Wrongful conviction unit?
I would love to see that. It's a resource issue, you know. I mean, I don't fully understand where resources come from. That's one of the conversations I will be having shortly. And how it's allocated maybe is the better understanding there. But I would love to see a statewide conviction integrity unit that would cover all the counties, but it would be certainly something that I would look at in Oklahoma County. In the meantime, of course, I feel like I have a good enough relationship with the Oklahoma Innocence Project. If they felt they had gathered evidence of somebody's innocence or they had DNA evidence they wanted us to review, it would definitely happen.
That's good. So much more we want to talk about. Here's your shot. That's your camera. Let them have it. You could tell them where to find you, how to connect with you, how to support you, and tell them about what you'll be as their next DA.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be able to be in this position to run for district attorney for Oklahoma County. I believe, as I said before, that the district attorney is not a job that you learn on the job. It is a job that requires experience because day one, you have to step into that role and you have to work the cases that are already in the office and cases that will be coming to the office. And so it's not a job for a politician. It's not a job for somebody that doesn't understand fully and have vast experience in the criminal justice system. I believe that as the district attorney for Oklahoma County, I can begin to build on the diversion programs to divert people from the criminal justice system. I feel it is the obligation of the district attorney's office to seek justice first and fairness for everybody in the county. It's to protect the public. And it takes somebody with a diverse background to be able to manage all of those pieces and ensure that they're available and used with every case that is brought in Oklahoma County. I hope that I have your trust. I hope that you will vote for me on June 28th. There's a primary coming up on Tuesday, June 28th. You can find me at vicki4da.com. That's my website. I think some members in Oklahoma County or citizens in Oklahoma County will be receiving mailers. I hope they will review those. There will also be walk cards that members and citizens of Oklahoma County will be getting. I want you to review those. And I will say the same thing that I think Senator Young said. If you have questions about my position as district attorney and what I would do, I will even give you my cell phone number.
Uh-oh, watch out.
It's 405-535-8016. I am happy to answer your questions about my role and what I would be doing as the district attorney and what other issues you think the district attorney might need to know in order to be able to serve the full community of Oklahoma County.
That's very brave to give your telephone number.
I'm not going to turn it on. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I will.
Thanks for being here.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time, and I appreciate you having the guts to run for the office. I know what it takes, so appreciate it so much. That's it for Conversation with Cubit. Listen, Tuesday, June 28th is your opportunity to be a part of the process. You don't have to sit here and answer any questions. You just have to go in the booth and pick a candidate. Go do it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.